Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So as of right now, September 5th, the Bahamas have been completely devastated by Hurricane Dorian in a situation in which a liaison to the Prime Minister of the Bahamas is calling apocalyptic. According to many reports, the scope of the devastation on the Grand Bahama is immeasurable. And much worse in some instances, people are landlocked on this island. The authorities are struggling to maintain law and order as people are looting and raiding houses, taking over houses. This is based on eyewitness reports. One man who lost his home on the island had said that it's horrible. It's a war zone over there and people don't know. The looting is just insane, he says. It started with supermarkets and then it went to liquor stores. That's where one gentleman got shot last night, right outside the liquor store. But it would make sense if 99% of the people they're saying are requiring aid and you're landlocked on an island, that it's only a matter of time before people start looting and pillaging. The woman that you see here is a survivor of the Bahama disaster, and she says that people were going to the houses that were still standing and they were taking over these homes at gunpoint. Now, the Grand Bahama and Bugout, the places most impacted, although the devastation is catastrophic, it's still very isolated. But just imagine if this was drawn out 2, 3, 4 weeks. In the span of 24 hours, the Grand Bahama descended into what could best be described as lawlessness and anarchy. This is why the depictions of movies like Mad Max are probably an understatement when it comes to illustrating societal collapse. The reality is a big national disaster situation of this sort would be far worse than any Hollywood movie would ever be able to depict. The Prime Minister of the Bahamas was quoted as saying, "This is a terrible disregard for the safety and security of others. Be warned, we will prosecute looters and other lawbreakers to the full extent of the law. We are a country of law." He said this, adding that he had mobilized the full resources of the government for rescue missions, and that they are committed to bringing order back to the Abaco Islands and the Grand Bahama. One of the main challenges in bringing resources to the island is that there are no roads to get there. Everything needs to be shipped in, so this is going to slow and delay recovery efforts. People have been reportedly using WhatsApp and satellite phones in order to communicate with each other across the island. Hundreds of police officers and Marines have been sent into the islands along with doctors and nurses and other healthcare workers in an effort to, of course, rescue those who've been impacted and, of course, provide any medical aid where necessary. But they, of course, have to navigate an environment which has been left in ruins and in which this lawlessness is abound. Just to give you some idea of the numbers here, the Red Cross is saying that 45% of the homes on Grand Bahama have been severely damaged, if not totally destroyed, and pretty much every part of the island has been impacted. 60,000 people are going to be in need of food, water, and shelter. There has been a death toll of 20, but that's expected to climb. It's estimated that the total reconstruction costs, and these are always conservative, is going to be around $7 billion. As you can see from these images, the damage is real. This is not being exaggerated. And what's worse is that the airport on Grand Bahama has been completely destroyed. So bringing supplies in by airplane is going to be very problematic, at least in the short term. Now, it should also be known that the Bahamas are no third or second world country. One thing that the Bahamas has going for it is that it is among the most prosperous of North American countries with one of the highest per capita incomes. But it will be a very lengthy rebuilding process, and people there are going to have to start to consider whether or not it's even worth rebuilding in the areas in which they originally lived. As these storms become more intense and more frequent, it may well be too risky to just go back to business as usual. The sheer scale of the destruction brought to this island by this hurricane, I don't think a lot of people are really grasping it. I'm going to post a link to a video which is flying overhead, and it's showing you what remains of what otherwise might be considered a tropical paradise by some. You really need to check out that video afterwards if you have any doubts about the power of Mother Nature. The good news is that not all of the Bahamas was affected, and the main parts of the country that remain intact and were largely unaffected, at least not to the severe degree that the Grand Bahama was affected, are coming together through charitable efforts to try to bring some order into the Grand Bahama situation. So lessons to be learned from this event are: number one, strategic relocation. Now, not everybody is going to have the means to choose where they live. At least the option to relocate is not going to be in the cards for everybody, at least not in the immediate future. That's the type of thing that takes a big investment and a lot of planning. But the situation on the Grand Bahama with the looting and the thefts and the homes being actually taken over, the home invasions, and God knows what else that might be going on there right now, is a microcosm of what would happen on a much larger scale should we be impacted by a larger disaster scenario. It's amazing how quickly things can get out of hand when people are desperate, and when you have the criminal element in society effectively given free rein by the inability of the police and military to respond and enforce the law. People will be predatorial and advantageous in these situations. Indeed, some of it is merely going to be people who are trying to survive and only taking what they need, the bare minimum. But there will also be the organized crime element. So the people who still have their homes intact and maybe still have supplies and resources are the homes which people are targeting. If you have something, they are targeting you. And it would be very hard to remain unnoticed and to remain gray man in a situation like this, because when people are out on the prowl looking for resources, when their sole aim and purpose is to find resources to exploit, it's going to be very hard for you to go under the radar and conceal the fact that you are in a sustainable position. Anybody who is in one of these natural disaster prone regions should have a plan as to how they're going to defend their homes and their possessions, and do have a bailout plan that you can expeditiously move your critical resources from one place to another in a short notice. The people of the Grand Bahama did have ample warning that the hurricane was coming. However, not all of them had the resources to evacuate. So many people are going to be in a position where they simply don't have the ability to relocate. This is a perfect example of a situation in which it was 3 meals from anarchy, because it doesn't take long for things to break down and for the wind to die down and for the waters to recede, for the real challenges of a post-disaster world to emerge. Things can get out of control real fast. It's not enough to simply have the supplies to weather a storm like this. One of the biggest challenges for preppers is not going to be riding out a disaster like this. If a person wanted to and they had the resources, they could hurricane-proof their homes to a significant degree. The challenge is going to be surviving the aftermath. And in a situation like this, where there's so many desperate people around you, you're not going to be able to help everyone. There's going to be situations where you're going to be able to share your preps. It's going to be in your interest to band together with people within your community. Are you ready to differentiate between those people that you can help and people which may be potential threats? Are you ready to take matters into your own hands and defend yourself in light of the fact that it may be weeks, if not months, as they're saying in the case of the Bahamas, that the situation is going to be resolved? Either you concede some of your supplies to make allies to fight off the hordes, or you're going to lose it all to the hordes. I'm going to post a link to an agency you can contribute to if you wanted to make a donation to the people of the Bahamas. This is one which has been approved by the Bahamian government. Let's keep the good people of the Bahamas in our minds and hope that this situation can be reconciled. I would really like to hear from people who may live along these coastal regions. What is your plan going to be for security after a disaster? Are you ready to deal with hordes of very desperate people who are willing to harm you and your family in order to ensure their own survival? How are you going to deal with the desperate criminal element after disaster strikes? Let me know in the comment section, and don't forget to check out that link below if you want to make a donation to the people impacted by what some have called one of the most powerful Category 5 hurricanes to ever hit this region in recorded history. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out. The best way to support this YouTube channel is to support yourself by gearing up through CanadianPreparedness.com or BugoutRoll.ca. Premium quality gear at the best possible price using the incredibly secure and easy to use Shopify platform. We offer free shipping to the United States for orders over $200 USD and free shipping to Canada over $75. So support the channel by supporting yourself.